trying to also include public comment. So we have quite a few people sitting in the public area.
Anybody want to say anything?
We'd like to do like maybe 3 minutes, but we'll have some flexibility, but a little bit behind schedule, so
Yeah, we
we'll
want to hear from you.
definitely.
Well, thank you. I guess I'd like to thank you all for spending with us. Clearly very important program. It's going to be a worse problem as we go forward.
I don't think the mic is on.
No,
Okay, right.
how's this?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you everybody to be here. There's going to be a lot more of these types of issues coming up. Baby boomers, aging, Alzheimer's, autism is on the increase. So I think this is very important. I really would like to thank you all for participating. It's very important. Thank you.
I talk pretty loud, I think you can hear me without this. My husband's had Alzheimer's for 5 years, and I just want to say that it took me a long time to get different things. I had a bracelet, a millimeter bracelet, and what I wanted to say was that not only does he wear it, but the caregiver wears it, so if something happens to me, they know to go find him. He's been missing 3 times. I've had 3 different police departments involved. Now I'm in Glendale, so I have a system that's really foolproof. The police in all jurisdictions, Burbank, North Hollywood, San Diego, Ojai, embarrassed to say, have been so responsive. We got 1.2 where the dogs almost came out in Burbank. And the Burbank officers sat with me for 2.5 hours in North Hollywood downtown. But it takes a while for the families and even myself to get to the point to get all these things. So what I have now are 3 things. I have the bracelet, I have this, and I also have through Verizon something called the Gizmo, which is an app on my phone that I press the button and in a minute I can find the address of where he is. And that is new. I used to have the family locator. It is not supported. It does not work. It's not a good GPS system, but the Gizmo is much better. My husband, even though he has the bracelet, was hard to keep it on. We had to have it cut down a couple of times to keep him. He's very, they do certain things. But he's never been found by an individual because of the bracelet. And I have called that number every time he's missing. And I'm not quite sure when I call that number, they just kind of take my info because I usually have already gotten the police department involved. I'm not sure if they would get the police involved for me if I say wasn't able to.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing.
What I want to kind of assure the group is that we're pulling all these facts and figures together. We're collecting data. Some of you have done the survey. How many of you have already done the survey online? We have a survey that's gone out. Great. So we have about 10 respondents so far that have provided information about their services, programs, and given us specific information. So we know that's just the beginning. We're just getting off the ground. So we want more people to respond to that, and we won't wait for them to go to the survey online. We'll go find them. But you can all help as task force members. Please keep in mind the website because it's set up so nicely where you can go right to the survey and complete that. So in your travels, will you please speak up to folks and ask them to complete that. I want to thank Solomon, who's really been kind of capturing and putting that all together in a chart for us and summarizing it as we go along. But we hope pretty quickly here that we can start to saturate what exists out there.
Yes. Sorry, I just have a quick question about the survey. Is that something that I could share widely
Yes.
with everyone?
Please, please.
There are no restrictions on that.
So thank you so much. I just want to make sure everybody is, like somebody said, they were hoping this was a working group. Are you feeling like it's a working group? Have you gotten to the work yet? Is this a format that's working for the working group? Are you finding that, I don't know, because this was 2 hours. This was 2 hours. That's, no, it's an hour and a half, wow. Are you feeling like you can get to the point where you can actually start talking and debating some of these products? Because Is this working? I want this to work for you.
Yeah, since I just joined the group, I mean, my hope is to be able to bring materials to you where we can really work on
Yeah.
some written material. Also, I thought that was really wise of you to say, we probably need some more specific task groups. And again, we don't have a lot of time. We want to get a report back to the board by December. So we don't have a lot of time, but I think that we can kind of
Good.
divide and conquer some
Good,
of
I
our
just want to make sure,
expertise.
because there's such smart people in this room, and you bring such incredible perspectives. Just want to make sure all this information you're taking in, you're having an opportunity to talk amongst yourselves.
I think we've been doing a lot of learning so
Yeah,
far.
I know.
The last meeting, we had San Diego's presentation, we had 2 more today.
Okay,
So I do hope that we have an opportunity. It's very helpful the last meeting, I believe, I'm sorry.
Lieutenant Gannon?
Yes, your insight was really interesting because you know so much detail about what the technologies that the sheriff's department uses, and if it's compatible or not compatible. And so I hope we have an opportunity to dive into that and sort of pick that apart and see
Okay,
the different systems that have been before, what could work for us.
good. Good, thank you. I'm again so proud of you all. The fact that you're volunteering for this means a lot to me. And I think it means a lot to families who have experienced a loved one wandering away. And I just feel like this is such an important goal that we're working on, and it's important for so many lives in LA County. So I know whatever you come up with will be the best that we think can work for LA County, and I think it'll be better than what we have now. But I do know that after talking to Nancy's family, I just feel like it just didn't work well in the very beginning. Just even in terms of who the first responder was, and then they kind of threw it back to Manhattan Beach because that's the local jurisdiction, not where she wandered from, but where she lived. And Manhattan Beach Police Department didn't have all that much experience in this, so I just feel like there was a lot of pieces that we could do better on the protocol. The protocol when someone wanders. I think a bracelet or technology is a part of that, but I think there's more. I think there's again, some protocol when it first happens, and whether that's getting a part of a network. But again, it's Metro, it's a lot. I think LASA, our homeless authority services, there's a sense that sometimes, folks that wander and maybe if they're not found for a while, they might have been taken in by a homeless encampment. No matter what you say about our homeless, they're like little villages. They're little groups. They take care of each other. They're already out in the cold, so they don't throw anybody out in the cold. They're like come join us. We'll take care of you. And again, reaching out to. I just feel like there's a protocol we haven't tapped yet in terms of when someone wanders that we can do quickly, efficiently, and increase the chances that we can clean them. So, thank you. I got to go to another meeting in downtown Los Angeles, so or at the HOA. So thank you so much. Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you.
A few more questions, we can do that. Okay, one more? Yes, Martin?
Yeah, more or less have a comment. So it would seem that there might be different components of these models. It seems that there might be different components of these models that if pieced together in kind of a coordinated, cohesive way, it might be helpful for LA County because you can see that an identification part would be helpful in terms of knowing who this person is and having that tied back to a information center. But at the same time, there needs to be a way to actually find, these individuals that's, maybe ties into law enforcement, but also into the Good Samaritan component. So I could see potentially various aspects being coordinated and weaved together to really structure something that will be comprehensive for LA.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to
I think it was a good point
That the supervisor brought up about whether or not this is a working group. And yes, this is a working group, it's a task force. And as you indicated, we've been in the learning, education phase. This is only our third meeting. Many of us did not have foundational knowledge about what we were looking at. So what we hope to bring to the working group with Adria being here is gathering all that information from what we hear at the meetings and from our surveys, and then to bring something to you so that we can have discussion about as a framework as we move forward to our recommendations. And I know that in the very beginning, the first meeting, the supervisor wanted something back in 60 days. When Adria said December, she didn't flinch, so I think we're okay. But we want to provide a quality product for whatever we present to the Board of Supervisors. So we will be going through that framework, and we will be having that discussion. Yes, you had a question?
Yes, so to have a countywide protocol, which then would be the most efficient way for collaboration, have you thought about how are we going to engage and encourage the independent cities in LA County to adopt this protocol? Because we can't force them.
Exactly.
So as a county task force, we come up with a solution, and we ask very nicely of the Sheriff's Department that they have to implement this, or they should implement this, or we're going to encourage them to implement this. But how do we engage LAPD, for example? Here is a giant agency of 10,000 officers and serve a very large population. How are we going to influence them to adopt whatever protocol we are offering?
Well, I had not given this much thought, but I can tell you that in this room we have the executive director of the CCJCC, and he, as part of the work that he does, engages all of the law enforcement agencies for Los Angeles County. So having them on our task force allows us to have access to that group. And you're right, we will not be able to force the other law enforcement agencies to participate. The Board of Supervisors carry a lot of weight. They can request and engage, along with the CCJCC, to ask them to participate. It's not that, I can't imagine that we would get 100% participation. I just don't think that's going to happen. But at least there will be the outreach done, and we do have access through CCJCC. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. I would just say that,
Could you just state your name?
hi, I'm Mark Delgado with CCJCC.
Yes.
CCJCC. Sorry, I'm late. We actually had our meeting earlier today, so just came in from that committee meeting. And we actually have, and Cynthia was at this meeting, we've engaged our committee already on this, and informed them about the effort that the county is taking on here. So a lot of the law enforcement agencies are aware and sort of looking, we've asked them to take a look at some of the different things that they may have in place within their own jurisdictions, because you're right, there are so many different city departments in the county here. And I think one of the first things we'll want to do is just gathering information about what each city has in place, if anything. But I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to take place, and you're right, we're not, just like with many other projects that we're working on, we're not going to be able to come up with a strategy and say this is the way it's going to be rolled out countywide, but we can dial up with all the agencies, make recommendations, try to look to see where it fits in with other processes that they have in place, and probably create that layer that I think we were talking about, where we have sort of this layered approach. And we try to engage as many of the departments as possible with strategies that the group all thinks are a good way to go, but then layering them with other efforts that departments might also be implementing on their own.
Thank you, Mark.
I think I'm loud too. I think I may have said this last meeting too, so pardon me if I'm just constantly repeating myself. I think that we have to include in this an enormous effort in educating the public. So that deli owner who finds the wanderer, who does he call? So everybody usually calls 911. And then we put in a series, there's a domino effect of what are the protocols that we put into place with our dispatch and with law enforcement. But we have to educate the public in the best possible way we can and the widest reach we can so that they know what to look for in a kid running down the street going like this, or an adult running down the street going like this. Most people who see that don't want anything to do with it. Most people who see, I was on the Arroyo Bridge, the suicide bridge in Pasadena last year. An elderly woman was walking along with her cane in the middle of the road, and people were just going around her. This is Pasadena. I turned around. It took me 5 minutes to turn around. I was panicked. I came back and nobody had stopped. I stopped traffic. I got her in my car. I found out where she lived. But I've done this with my son, so I was, just another person who's gone wandering. I could do that. But in those 5 to 7 minutes, no one in Pasadena had stopped to help her. And she had a little white sweater on and her little, she wasn't a scary looking person. So I think that we have to empower our public with information and education. If you see something, say something, that sort of thing. Who do you call? What do you do?
So there's so many, I think there's different sort of prongs to this process. And so I think, what is so exciting is to have the Board of Supervisors leadership to say this is important. So we've kind of got this trickle down going on right now, but I agree we have an opportunity as a task force to kind of see this as a community engagement. And so I think we're engaging, each other because you're all knowledgeable about this topic and you have a vested interest and a passion for it. So I think that we bring, kind of grow that out. So as we kind of look at what partners can reach the most folks to do some of that. So I think we're, I think of it in a little bit of stages. So I don't want us to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think that we're collecting information that we can kind of use experts here to make sure we have sort of the pieces and we compare them correctly, kind of look at what the opportunities are, and then we're kind of armed and ready to have our partners go out into the community. I just wanted to kind of add real quickly that I see this as like a gap analysis. We have a gap in the response. And so I think that we have a kind of a very simple framework that we can use to structure this very quick moving kind of initiative that we have. I have a feeling it won't be the end of the initiative. I think there'll be another phase. So here I think we have this opportunity to get really solid, good information together, begin to ignite and get people interested and willing to take that and share it. Barbara had
I
something to add.
just wondered if maybe we are going to create subcommittees or work groups, because that could be one. And training could be one, and technology could be one. And I can think of 4 really clear ones right out of the gate. And this is a big group, and we can only meet, for a couple of hours. So I would certainly welcome that opportunity to have those smaller groups that can dive more deeply and then bring back to the larger group what we learned or what our recommendations are or whatever that might
So we
be.
want to be efficient and effective, right? So I think that we'll begin, we have a lot of information already. Some of the presenters' information, we have much more depth already collected. We're going to be looking at that, and I have a feeling there'll be maybe 2 or 3 groups that we may need to meet just a few times, 2 or 3 times maybe. And it may be at these meetings we do, half of a meeting, and then the task force for that subcommittee stays on a little bit longer if you'd be willing. So we want to make a balance here because everybody's volunteering time. We don't want to put too much pressure, but I do think that you're right. We have a lot of expertise here. So I'll be working with the department to figure out some good strategies that we can, really do a good job for that. I think what's missing so far is you need to have information in front of you to go, you don't have this, and I know about that. I'm going to give it to you. We want to begin to provide you some summary. So we're ready for that. We're getting ready for that now. Anna?
Just make one suggestion, I'll make a lot of suggestions, but this important one is, since we focus, I think it was first or second meeting, we talked about what's our mission, what are the objectives, because that will acknowledge what some of the members of this group are asking for their specific need. And I think that within that mission, we have about 3 or 4 things listed. And maybe as a suggestion is keep that mission on your agenda as either on the top or the bottom, or when you have a PowerPoint so it stands out. So if there's someone new or someone who's been ongoing, to make sure that, okay, we're all focused on the same, 4 or 5 objectives. There may be components within those objectives that you can break down into working groups. So no one feels like we're losing, their focus or, the main agenda. So
Excellent, excellent. Rich, you wanted to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to share that, thanks to your input from the last meeting, we have drafted language for the motion, revised motion language, and we have provided that to the board to include the community engagement. So that will be, Kevin, I believe it's going to be sometime this month or sometime in July where that motion will be addressed by the board. So it will be, if it is approved, then that will be a requirement of this task force.
And my hope is we don't get too bogged down in what's on these things, I'm the non-government person, right? I feel that we'll do what we can. I think we can do as much as we can, and when it's in the motion itself, that gives us more power, and that will help us be sure that we get that covered. Other comments people were hoping to make? We just have just a couple more minutes because I don't want to keep people longer. I have a question, since there's so much wisdom in this group. I wanted to just throw out the idea of, I think we make a lot of assumptions when we talk about first responders. And one of my goals early on here is to be sure that I collect the protocols from first responders in our county to the degree that I can, and I talked to Mark a little bit about that. So just, could we brainstorm just real quick, like a 3-minute thing? Like, who are the first responders? When you think of this particular issue of someone who's wandered, who do you think is a first responder? You're a first responder, right?
So if I may,
Yes.
I have a whole packet on what we do. We are your first responders. 911 comes into the Sheriff's Department in LA County. So it's always going to come to us first. And once we realize that it's going to be a wandering case, it will be our hand that will have the lead. The only time it wouldn't be is if it's a municipal police agency. There's a lot to discuss. We definitely won't cover this in the next 10 minutes. So what I did is, that's why I was running late here. I got as many as I could. I think I got out of there with 20, and I can make more copies next time. This is our entire protocol, because I got asked a lot since the last meeting what we, the Sheriff's Department, do. The checklist, everything that we follow, the protocol that we set in motion. Amber alerts, everything's covered. So I made that as many as I could for the task force. Maybe we can put it online, or I'll make more copies. But that probably is going to help you have a basis for what we do, so you can understand how these other things we're looking at may fit in.
And we could put that on the website.
I was thinking,
Yes.
But I would also say first responder, right? So it starts with 911. But a lot of focus is also the prevention part, the education part.
So it's a
when-
prevention and
Right,
response,
right.
yeah.
So when a fireman goes in on a call to assist the senior or assist the family, and they just so happen to realize, there is a family member here who has either memory loss issues, dementia, or a family member who has autism, that's also a time, because my focus is always prevention. Before there's a crisis, why don't we educate and prevent something, a catastrophe from happening? So I think that's also an important layer, is include the fire department. I know we talked about that too. Because they have an important, as well as police and sheriff, who do incredible work, is to educate when you come in contact, with the family then, rather than after the fact, when they got lost and they're wandering, and it becomes huge costs and huge issue.
So there's sort of, the prevention and folks that can do work, even disease-specific organizations, senior centers, the city, and there's law enforcement, there's fire departments, and just another.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo some of what Anat was saying. Is oftentimes many of the wandering calls that come into Medic Alert are not initiated by law enforcement, but they are initiated by fire, paramedics, and EMS, because the call began as somebody that may have had a stroke or may have had heat exhaustion or may have an elderly person that had fallen somewhere, and they hadn't actually been reported as missing yet. So we do typically like to consider all of them within the wandering realm, because that education component of recognizing that is incredibly important.
It's also, to your point, we are all first responders.
The deli man, no.
Yeah.
The deli man.
And if you, maybe as a resource, if you study how some of the Asian countries do this in places like Singapore, where you can't have a taxi license, you will lose your taxi license if you are discovered to have left the person like you saw on the street. In the 4th grade, they are taught how to approach elderly people with dementia. So this is a deeply different societal issue, but I really would, this is a special group, and I don't mean to preach, but we are all first responders in the best system.
Really got the community, and I'm thinking domains, like there's the whole healthcare. So first responders in healthcare and criminal justice and different kinds of justice issues, we have first responders. What do you think about in social services? I mean, APS is often called right in the middle of the night, like they call.
Mental health as well.
Mental health, psychiatric emergency workers, right? Coming to be asked if you can put this person on a 5150. So then you realize nobody knows where they belong. What are we missing though? Because I think are we missing anything? Everybody, I guess. We've got the community.
Yeah, but also the faith-based organizations. That's where the families are. That's where older adults go.
Faith-based.
So any kind of outreach we could start with, I would say that's a huge task. But each of our agencies already work with various faith-based organizations on various levels.
I just flashed on there's a Templeton Foundation grant right now, a large grant that is helping educate faith-based communities in the African American community about how to respond to people with depression. And I thought, I could see a lot of parallels, as far as reaching out to some of these same key faith-based organizations. So, I think leveraging anything that already exists is also going to be something we really need to do. Is kind of see where we can make this issue, part of bigger initiatives, don't you? Tell me.
Just to add, faith-based organizations within APS, they are mandatory reporters. They are required to report suspected abuse situation. We do a lot of outreach activities to educate the public. Many of them may not know they are mandatory reporters. So this fits in when we talk about outreach, education. I think that would be an important component of it.
I'm looking at time. Our next meeting is tentatively set for July 20th, and then we're looking at location, I think, possibly back at Kenneth Hall. So we'll get you more information on that. What I would like to do, if you have anything else you want to add, I was thinking that we might want to close fairly soon here so that we have just a few more minutes more informally. I'd love to get contact information from those of you that feel like you have more information you want to get into the materials that we give out. So I'll be doing individual interviewing. So I'd love to get contact information. I'd love you to also brainstorm together. So we'll close shortly.
I was just thinking about the individual work groups, that if prior to the next meeting, that we could define what those work groups were so people could self-identify.
Excellent.
For those work groups and be prepared to have some discussion within the work groups on the day of the next meeting.
Great.
And provide any additional information that we have on the programs that we've seen or others that come to light.
We'll do kind of a summary, and then we'll have time on the agenda to break into some work groups at that point, right? I think that's excellent. Is everybody on board with that?
Yes.
I really want to hear about Silver Alert too. I can't wait to. I feel like Silver Alert doesn't get used enough. I don't know.
It's usually in support of the LA agencies. That's generally why it doesn't get to that level. We count on the individual municipalities to do all the legwork until it meets the criteria, and generally by then it's been a couple of hours generally.
We're talking about such a broad population, so I know we're talking about, 0 to to infinity, as long as we're living. But I know the Silver Alert is something that is another tool, so we'll get all those in the report. Anybody need a last word? I think we'll formally close then. Thank you. I think we had a really productive meeting.